Imagine standing at the edge of a roaring NASCAR pit lane in 1965. The smell of gasoline and burnt rubber fills the air as mechanics shout over the deafening thunder of V8 engines. Stock car racing was more than a sport back then. It was a battle of engineering supremacy, a test of which manufacturer could claim dominance on Sunday and turn that glory into sales on Monday. But in the midst of that golden era of American motorsport, a shadow hung over the tracks. A mechanical giant that almost no one would get to see in action. This was Ford's 427 SOHC Cammer, a masterpiece of speed and precision so far ahead of its time that NASCAR effectively shut the door on it before it could make history. This wasn't just another engine, this was Ford's answer to Chrysler's dominance, an engineering marvel that could rev to the heavens and leave competitors scrambling. The Cammer took Ford's already legendary 427 FE block and transformed it into something revolutionary. Instead of the old-fashioned pushrods that had been standard for decades, Ford introduced a single overhead camshaft on each cylinder bank, chain-driven and built to handle immense stress at high RPMs. Its hemispherical combustion chambers allowed for incredible airflow, producing a factory-rated 616 horsepower with race versions pushing beyond 700. In a world where most engines struggled to stay alive at 6,000 RPM, the Cammer laughed at the limit, breathing harder the higher it revved. But its legend was born not from what it achieved on the track, but from what it was denied. NASCAR's sudden rule changes in 1965 banned the engine before it could make its mark, sparking accusations of favoritism and politics. Ford fans saw it as a betrayal, a masterpiece silenced before its song could be heard. From that moment on, the Cammer became more than an engine. It became a symbol. It represented the raw ambition of Ford's racing division, the clash between innovation and regulation, and the frustration of a generation of engineers who knew they had built something extraordinary. Today, the Cammer stands as a ghost of what could have been, a legend whispered about in garages and collector circles, its mystique growing with every retelling of its story. To truly understand why the 427 SOHC Cammer became such a lightning rod in racing history, we have to step back into the early 1960s, a time when Detroit's Big Three were locked in a high-stakes battle not just for market share, but for bragging rights on America's fastest tracks. NASCAR was the arena where reputations were forged. Win on Sunday, sell on Monday wasn't just a slogan, it was the business model that pushed automakers to pour millions into motorsport development. And nobody exemplified this rivalry more than Ford and Chrysler. By 1964, Chrysler's 426 Hemi had taken the racing world by storm. Its hemispherical combustion chambers, radical for the time, allowed it to dominate NASCAR's ovals, giving Chrysler an almost unbeatable edge. Ford, a company with a proud performance heritage, couldn't afford to let that dominance stand. Their FE engine family, which had started with the modest 352 and evolved into the fearsome 427, was strong, but it wasn't enough. Ford needed something bold, something radical that could crush the Hemi and reassert their superiority. This wasn't just about racing, it was about pride, innovation, and the identity of American performance engineering. Behind closed doors in Dearborn, engineers worked tirelessly to develop the Cammer, a weapon meant to end Chrysler's reign. They weren't just making another engine, they were creating a statement. NASCAR in the 60s was as much about politics as horsepower. Chrysler's lobbying power was formidable, and the sanctioning body had always walked a fine line between fairness and favoritism. When word of Ford's revolutionary engine began to spread, fear rippled through the competition. Some saw it as progress, others as a threat that could destabilize the balance of power. The ban that followed wasn't just about keeping competition close. It revealed how intertwined racing had become with corporate influence. Ford's frustration boiled over, leading to a temporary withdrawal from NASCAR, but their energy didn't go to waste. The Cammer found a new home on drag strips and salt flats, and Ford doubled down on muscle car production, shaping the golden age of performance cars. That tension between innovation and regulation, between engineers and executives, is part of what makes this era of motorsport so fascinating. The Cammer became the forbidden fruit of racing, a glimpse at what American engineering could achieve if left untamed. When you open the hood on a Cammer-powered car, you're not just looking at an engine, you're looking at an artifact of mechanical genius. Built on the rugged foundation of Ford's FE 427 block, the Cammer was a masterpiece of design and strength. It featured cross-bolted main caps that gave it unmatched durability at extreme RPM levels, a forged steel crankshaft capable of withstanding brutal forces, and a bore and stroke combination perfectly balanced for both high revving performance and raw torque. But the magic lay in its valve train. At a time when Detroit engines were defined by pushrods and conservative design, the Camry's single overhead camshaft layout was revolutionary. Long timing chains ran through precision machined guides to operate the massive cams, while hemispherical combustion chambers allowed unprecedented airflow. This design gave the Camry its incredible breathing capability, letting it make well over 600 horsepower right out of the crate, with race engines capable of over 700 horsepower, a staggering figure in the 1960s. Ford engineers even offered exotic parts through their racing catalogs: magnesium intake manifolds, dual 4-barrel carburetor setups, and lightweight competition. Valve train components. Its engineering wasn't just impressive, it was intimidating. Racers who got their hands on Camry engines quickly learned they were built to dominate. Its design was so advanced that some argue it paved the way for Ford's later modular V8s and even influenced competition engines decades later. Few engines have left such a lasting mark despite such limited production. Only a handful of cars ever came from the factory with this engine installed. Most Camrys were shipped in crates to race teams, creating a mystique that continues to captivate collectors today. Looking at the Camry is like stepping into an alternate timeline of American performance engineering. It showed that Ford's engineers were willing to push boundaries, creating an engine so advanced that the competition didn't want to see it on the track. In many ways, it's proof that greatness doesn't always need a trophy to be legendary. Sometimes it's the story of what could have been that makes a piece of machinery immortal. The Camry's rise and fall is one of the clearest examples of how politics has always shaped motorsports. NASCAR's decision in 1965 to ban the 427 SOHC was framed as a move to maintain fairness, but for Ford fans, it felt like sabotage. While Chrysler's 426 Hemi remained legal, NASCAR's ruling required Ford to produce thousands of Camry-powered street cars to meet homologation standards, an impossible ask given how expensive and complex the engine was to produce. With the stroke of a pen, the most advanced stock car engine ever built was erased from NASCAR's future. The fallout was swift. Ford pulled back from NASCAR competition, redirecting resources into other arenas like NHRA drag racing and land speed record attempts at Bonneville. It was a stunning pivot that not only reshaped Ford's motorsport strategy, but also shifted the focus of American car culture. The Camry would become a drag strip king, powering Mustang funny cars and Fairlane-based dragsters to record-breaking speeds. Racers like Connie Kalitta and Don Prudhomme turned the Camry into a legend, cementing its place in the annals of NHRA history. Yet, there's always been an undercurrent of what if. What if NASCAR had allowed Ford to run this engine? Would the muscle car wars of the late 60s have taken a different path? Would Chrysler's Hemi still be the engine of legend it is today? Or would the Camry have stolen its crown? Even NASCAR insiders at the time admitted the engine was too advanced for the competition to catch up. Some called it unfair, others called it visionary. Ford's withdrawal also set a precedent for how manufacturers would approach NASCAR in the decades that followed. It was a reminder that racing was as much about boardroom decisions as it was about horsepower. The Camry, in a sense, became a symbol of the tension between innovation and regulation, a masterpiece of engineering that couldn't fit within the system built to control it. That's part of why its legend has only grown, because sometimes the most fascinating stories in motorsport aren't about the champions, but about the machines that were too dangerous to compete. The Camry's story didn't end with NASCAR's ban. In many ways, that was just the beginning. Freed from the constraints of stock car racing, the 427 SOHC became a drag racing legend. On the quarter mile, it found its perfect stage. Tuners extracted over 800 horsepower from its massive heads and bulletproof bottom end, turning cars like the Mustang, Fairlane, and Galaxy into record setters. It was a golden era for Ford performance, with the Camry at its heart, roaring down drag strips across America and rewriting what racers thought was possible. Collectors today treat Camry engines like holy relics. Original blocks can fetch $60,000 or more, and complete authentic builds command six figures. Even modern reproductions of the Camry are highly sought after, proof of the engine's lasting mystique. Car shows and auctions often feature Camry-powered vehicles that draw crowds not because of their rarity alone, but because of the mythology surrounding this motor. People gather around them not just to admire polished aluminum and steel, but to imagine a world where these engines battled it out on NASCAR ovals, side by side with Hemi and Chevrolets. This is the the ultimate what-if story in American motorsport. Had NASCAR not banned the camera, Ford might have dominated stock car racing for years. The Hemi's reputation as the king of NASCAR might have been challenged or even overshadowed. Instead, the camera became a legend of missed opportunity, a piece of racing folklore that fans still argue about at car meets and online forums. Its influence is undeniable. Ford's modern V8s, like the 5.0-liter Coyote and 7.3-liter Godzilla, carry echoes of the camera's spirit. Its bold engineering proved that Detroit automakers were capable of building engines to rival the best in the world, not just Europe's exotics. It's a reminder that innovation sometimes burns brightest in the shadows, where rules and politics can't dim its brilliance. Picture an abandoned Ford race shop, the smell of machine oil still lingering in the air decades later. In the corner sits a lone camera, polished but silent, a symbol of unrealized glory. You can almost hear its roar in your mind, a sound so fierce it once scared an entire industry into rewriting the rulebook. That's the story of the 427 SOHC Cammer, a motor too advanced for its time, too wild for the system that birthed it. The Cammer's tale isn't just about racing, it's about ambition, risk, and the pursuit of perfection. It reminds us that progress often comes with resistance, that the greatest innovations are sometimes feared before they're celebrated. For Ford engineers of the 1960s, this engine wasn't just a project, it was a statement to the world. We can build something that changes the game, and even though NASCAR never gave it a fair chance, its legend has only grown stronger. Every camera-powered car that fires up today carries the weight of history. Collectors, racers, and fans know they're witnessing a piece of engineering brilliance that almost rewrote American motorsport, and maybe that's what makes this story so captivating. It's not just about what happened, but about what could have happened. Would the NASCAR record books look entirely different? Would the Hemi's mythos be rivaled by Ford's outlaw engine? These are the questions that keep the camera alive in our imaginations. So as you watch footage of those classic Mustangs and Fairlanes tearing down the drag strip, remember this: greatness doesn't always need a trophy. Sometimes it just needs to exist, to inspire, and to make us wonder. And now, it's your turn. Have you ever seen a camera in person? Heard one roar to life? Share your stories, your sightings, your favorite Ford legends in the comments. Because engines like this don't just belong to history books, they belong to every enthusiast who believes innovation should never be silenced.